When the Samari government succeeded the Makerere government in 2002, the country's revenue had reached 3.2 billion, with debt rising from around 5.8 billion in 1999 to 8.7 billion by the end of 2002. Difficult years of adjustment, but with relatively small absolute deficits and a focus on stabilization. Samari government, across roughly 9 years, oversaw the total revenue collection of around 58 billion and total expenditure of 57.4 billion. Debt essentially flat or slightly declining at about 8.7 billion to 7.5 billion. That period showed that when revenue is usually carefully, it is possible to grow the economy without blowing out our national debt. Then came the O'Neill government, the end of 2011 to mid-2019. After 8 years in office, and thanks to the prudent fiscal management of the Samari government, the O'Neill government oversaw the collection of 91.6 billion in revenue, expending a total expenditure of 112.3 billion, a cumulative overspend of more than 20 billion, and debt jumping roughly from 7.5 billion under Samari to 33.7 billion under O'Neill. Mr. Speaker, those choices, aggressive spending, creative accounting, hidden liabilities, left the country exposed before COVID-19 even arrived. Mr. Speaker, the current Marape government has taken that pattern and amplified it to the next level. Since taking office in May 2019, the Marape government's total revenue collection has reached an estimated 123 billion, with total expenditure short of 159 billion, a gap approaching 47 billion in just 6.5 years. Debt has surged from 33.7 billion when O'Neill left government in mid-1999 to a projected 66.5 billion by the end of 2026, almost doubling the debt stock, and leaving every child effectively owing more to the creditors than ever before. Year by year, the charts tell the same story. In the early 2000s, deficits were measured in tens of hundreds of millions. You guys hold it up. With at least one small surplus by the 2012. Deficits were routinely in the billions, and the COVID years, the annual shortfall blew out to more than 7 billion. Deficits remain large, even as the government now claims to have fixed the boat.
We have a point of order.
Speaker, this is not a protest chamber. The circulation they've done is sufficient. I think the very standing order literate member from Madang knows exactly the decorum of the House. So I just rule to your wisdom. I leave to your wisdom to make ruling, please.
Honorable Prime Minister, your point of order is in order. So, you reply, honorable members, and the
Prime Minister, and you start the point of order now.
Honorable open member, I had a point of order from the Prime Minister.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister said, according to standing orders, I've yet to hear him quote which actual provision of the standing orders that him and you are relying on.
Open member from Madang was Shadow Treasury. Minister was Shadow Treasury, me no asking me to debate him this point of order.
Okay, Mr. Speaker,
the chair has made its ruling. His point of order is in order, and this is the first time I believe in this House. Now we have a current placard, now show him up. We have enough of this already. This is in front of all members now. It's been circulated. So what are you trying to prove here? So you may continue with your
Mr.
response
Speaker.
to the budget.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, if I may. Your question is why we are trying to do here. We are not only the people in this House that is watching these proceedings. Right. For that reason, they do not have the public, do not have the benefit of a table that you have. No.
Honorable,
Mr. Speaker, it's my budget response, so we reply.
Honorable Shadow Treasurer,
yes.
I have ruled. You are trying to tell us, or tell the chair, that every information that is here, it will eventually go to the medias are here. But you report him to the public.
That's correct.
That's right.
Okay, so I'm right.
So you may continue with your...
Mr. Speaker, so sabla pilim pen, bibla and Rausi memo right?
You may continue with your budget reply.
As they say, numbers don't lie. So if I can continue.
Honorable Minister, what is your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, such displays like this has to seek leave of the Parliament or leave from the chair. Leave was not taken. How did he bring it in? How did two people stand up, Mr. Speaker?
All Minister, point of order, I'm in order. I'm giving you the understanding also. It's just that, like, give me like making some soul or something or some flow. And we shouldn't be doing that. Me, let him Shadow Treasurer, Shadow Minister of Treasury long, continue long, reply long on the budget.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You may count in my first point of order. Okay. So, as I was saying, Mr. Speaker, then came the O'Neill government. Oh, now you bloody disturb speech for me. Okay, year by year, the charts tell the same story. In early 2000, deficits were measured in tens of hundreds of millions, as the good members of this House will see in the graph before them. With at least one small surplus by the 2012, deficits were routinely in the billions. And in COVID years, the annual shortfall blew out to more than 7 billion in 1 year. Deficits remain large even as the government now claims to have fixed the boat. With the legacy of those choices visible in higher interest costs, now at a record 3.6 billion budgeted in 2026. This is the truth. Two successive governments have normalized a structure where expenditure constantly runs ahead of realistic revenue and where borrowing fills the gap, while the quality of frontline services lags badly behind, and growth in the budget headline. The gap between the numbers and reality. Mr. Speaker, let us turn to the 2026 budget itself and the gap between what the numbers say and what the people see. The Treasurer has told the nation that the 30.9 billion in expenditure represents 2,000 kina and 882 per person in PNG, based on the estimated 2026 population of 10.7 million. This is to fund education, health, policing, roads, and debt interest. Mr. Speaker, many families in Port Moresby and Lae spend that amount on food and transport in a single month. In settlements, people juggle rent, school project fees, PMB fares, with no safety net, and for them, there is no sign of 2,882 in services or opportunities. Mr. Speaker, we are told inflation is contained and that non-resource growth is averaging around 4%, with the government proudly claiming the strongest period of sustained growth in our history. Mr. Speaker, yet the trade store and the fuel pump and families see prices rising faster than wages and far faster than the quality of services. While informal workers remain unprotected from shocks, the budget that stabilizes Treasury while destabilizing households is not yet a people's budget. Education and health and human reality. Mr. Speaker, children sit at the center of this story. The government highlights a 4.9 billion for education, the largest sector allocation on paper, and a substantial increase compared to a decade ago, when education spending was only a fraction of today's level. Yet tens of thousands of teachers' positions remain unfunded or unfilled, classrooms are overcrowded, and schools wait months for funds trapped in trust accounts or delayed by release bottlenecks, meaning that the big numbers in Volume 2 of the Treasurer's budget never turn into chalk desks or textbooks. Mr. Speaker, health is no different. We see about 3.2 billion appropriated for medical supplies, provincial hospitals, church health services, and even a new medical university. More than that. Fix the boat story. We are told the government has fixed the boat. The deficits have fallen from around 8.9% of GDP, or 7.3 billion, at the COVID peak to 1.1%, and that debt will trend down for nearly 50% of GDP. So, Mr. Speaker, I noted that the Treasurer puts percentage, so we put him amount. So 50% of GDP is 66.6 billion. 50% of GDP, figure says it's 133 billion in 2025. Mr. Speaker, the government's achievement towards consolidation is real, on paper, and deserves acknowledgement. But it sits on a fiscal tightrope. That tightrope is built on highly optimistic revenue forecasts, very ambitious capital spending plans, and an assumption that nothing goes wrong between now and the year 2034. Mr. Speaker, in a country where one earthquake, one major mine shutdown, one major drought, one global shock, or one Black Wednesday can rewrite the national story in a single week. This looks more like wishful thinking than conservative stewardship. Revenue, structure built on sand. Mr. Speaker, the total revenue for 2026 is projected at around 29.3 billion, a sharp increase compared to the actual collections by a few years ago, driven by big steps in tax collections and ambitious increases in state-owned enterprise dividends and other non-tax revenues. But state-owned enterprises have a long history of under-delivery, withholding dividends and being hit by commodity volatility and operational failures. Past years show that projected dividend lines were not met. And when those checks did not arrive, the cuts fell on maintenance, goods and services, and arrears to suppliers. Mr. Speaker, if those new checks do not arrive in 2026, it will not be boardrooms that feel the pain. It will be schools, clinics, roads, and frontline wages. Mr. Speaker, the multi-year charts of revenue versus expenditure show a systematic habit of announcing optimistic inflows and then filling the gap with borrowing instead of structural reform. That habit has left us more dependent on a narrow tax base, and a handful of large projects, while the informal sector and rural economy carry the hidden costs of inflation, weak services, and insecurity. Expenditure, big spend, weak delivery. Mr. Speaker, 30.9 billion in expenditure sounds transformational, and there is no doubt that nominal spending has more than tripled since the Samari government and doubled from 2017 under the O'Neill government. But the wage bill continues to grow faster than the real non-resource economy. The thousands of unattached or ghost workers still remain on payroll systems that have resisted reform for more than a decade. Capital budgets look impressive, and each year the volume 3 of the budget books lists long roads, new health facilities, and economic projects. Yet historically, only a fraction of these are actually delivered on time and to standard. And maintenance of new infrastructure is consistently neglected. Mr. Speaker, we risk more ribbon-cutting projects that fall apart within a few years, while calling it security with growth, as communities are left with collapsed bridges and roads, broken vehicles, and no recurrent funding. The charts show the real outcome clearly. Ever-rising expenditure lines, a widening gap over the revenue in the O'Neill and Marape years, and debt stocks climbing steeply since 2012. Mr. Speaker, what they do not show is the father who cannot find work, the mother selling betel nut to keep children in school, and the youth in the settlement drifting towards crime when the promise of record budgets never reaches their street or block. Addressing the government's favorite excuse, the other guy. Mr. Speaker, this is the point where the government members will say, yes, mistakes were made in the past, but we are better than before. That is very low bar for our country, a country without potential. In this House, I have probably been the most critical of the member for Yalbu Pangia. Our differences are well documented. The O'Neill years left hidden debts, inflated numbers, and a mountain of arrears. The chart documented the surge in expenditure over revenue and the jump in debt from around 7.5 billion to 33.7 billion. I accused him of sinking the country in debt and accusing his government of reaching 40 billion in debt. Mr. Speaker, the Marape government has pushed our debt past 60 billion, an amount that would be incomprehensible against a debt level during the Samari government term. But, Mr. Speaker, there were also significant successes under the O'Neill government that I can admit. Peter O'Neill's 8 years as Prime Minister saw a commissioning of the country's first LNG, during real GDP growth and boosting export revenues and billions in oil and gas revenue that the Marape government now enjoys expending. The project now showcasing Papua New Guinea's ability to deliver major international investments. The O'Neill government did deliver transformative infrastructure, such as the Kumul flyover, and new city roads, APEC House, the relocation of Port Moresby's port to Motukia, upgrades in over 20 airports, and the 3 billion highway rehabilitation. It was the O'Neill government that reintroduced the free education in 2012, expanded health facilities, and constructed institutions like the West Pacific University. Under his leadership, Papua New Guinea hosted the 2018 APEC Summit, raising the nation's profile and attracting new investment, cementing his government's reputation for ambitious development and modernization across the country. Those years were not without controversy. That is precisely why some of us fought for change of government in 2019. However, Mr. Speaker, Mr. O'Neill is no longer in charge of the country's affairs or its finances. So the buck no longer stops with him.
This guy this time.
The Treasurer can no longer continue to blame the failures of this government on him. And Mr. Speaker, for the record, this is why I printed out a graph that actually confirms the actual numbers. In the minister's speech, he said that his government was burdened by deficits. You will see on the form that the majority of the deficits have been under this government and not the O'Neill government. The O'Neill government was not responsible for the record expenditure close to $160 billion. He is not responsible for our debt reaching $66 billion by the end of 2025. He is not responsible for the current state of law and order in the country, the shortage of medicines reaching our hospitals. Mr. Speaker, 6.5 years after the O'Neill government, Maravek government, the same bad habits remain. We still see billion kina deficits, unrealistic revenue forecasts, state-owned enterprises that withhold or delay dividends, payroll leakages that reform programs have failed to fix, and capital projects that look impressive in the budget books but never get built or properly maintained. This is not a clean break from past mismanagement. It is simply dressing it up. It's a lipstick on a pig. Duct tape on a sinking boat when our people deserve reform, honest. Human costs the same, unfunded teacher positions, under-resourced clinics, communities waiting years for basic infrastructure while interest and arrears are paid faithfully every month. The human cost of mismanagement. Mr. Speaker, the deficit line does not capture the true cost of poorly managed economy. That cost is counted in children who drop out because schools lack teachers, desks, and books, even as the education budget sets new records on paper. Patients who die of treatable conditions because there are no medicines, no beds, no fuel for an ambulance, while the national health appropriations have never been higher. Women facing violence in communities with no police presence or functioning courts, because law and justice funds are eroded by arrears, late warrants, and poor coordination. Youth whose potential is wasted in crime, alcohol, and idleness, in a decade that official statistics describe as one of the sustained growth, but which for them has meant sustained exclusion. Every kina borrowed, wasted, or stolen today is a kina stolen from our children's future. From climate-resilient infrastructure, from modern hospitals, from quality schools, and from a diverse economy. Every under-reformed payroll system, every dubious contract, every trust account game normalities, mediocrity, and teaches our children that corruption is the cost of doing business with the state. The responsibility of this House, Mr. Speaker, budgets are moral documents, and in this debate, three groups carry a special burden. Members of Parliament, our duty is to scrutinize, not applaud. We must challenge unrealistic assumptions, expose waste, and demand that savings first go to teachers, nurses, police, and rural infrastructure, not to campaign expenses or new convoys of vehicles. If we fail, we are not bystanders, we are accomplices. 2, ministers and senior officials. A record budget means nothing if warrants are late. Funds are trapped, arrears grow, and the frontline services starve. A budget is not an election brochure. It is a contract with the people, and the contracts are measured in delivery, not in press conference. 3, public servants. You are in the engine room, but a leaking engine seizes. Ghost workers, fake invoices, inflated contracts, and abuse of grants are acts that rob children of knowledge, patients of medicine, and communities of safe bridges. and reliable roads. As someone widely recognized for fighting corruption can plainly say, this is not personal. It is about choosing integrity over convenience and truth over spin. In 2019, we demanded a change of government. In 2026, we demand a change of culture. What a people-first budget would look like. Mr. Speaker, a truly people-first budget would use conservative, realistic revenue forecasts, grounded in past collection performance and genuine SOE capacity, not aspirational divided figures or dividend figures. Protect the basics, teachers, health workers, medicines, law and justice before funding vanity projects, political slash programs, or poorly designed capital works. Cut waste ruthlessly, ghost workers, inflated contracts, needless travel, and duplicate agencies that add red tape but not value. Empowering watchdogs, the Auditor General, the Ombudsman, the internal audit units, and the FIU and ICAC to follow the money without fear or favor, publishing their findings in full. Measure success not by billions announced, but by improved lives. Fewer school dropouts, lower maternal deaths, safer streets, more jobs, and higher real incomes. The judgment of history and our duty now. History will not remember whether this budget was 28 billion, 30.9 billion, or 32 billion. It will remember whether this House lifted our people or failed them. It will remember whether we told the truth about unrealistic assumptions, weak implementation, and corruption that bleeds the nation, or whether we hide behind the slogans like security with growth. Mr. Speaker, a mother in East Sepik, a youth in Ley, a teacher in Madang, a nurse in Bougainville. They will not remember our speeches. They will remember whether their lives became safer, fairer, and more dignified because of decisions taken in this chamber. In 2019, we said enough to one era of mismanagement. In 2026, let us say enough to budgets that look strong on paper but leave our people weak in reality. Let us demand a budget that is not only fiscally responsible but morally responsible. Calls to action. So today, 3 clear calls to action. To members of Parliament, do your duty. Read beyond the headlines. Interrogate the assumptions. And put the classroom, the clinic, and the village road ahead of your own comfort. To ministers and heads of departments, honor the trust placed in you. Release funds on time. Fix the leakages, enforce consequences, and make sure money reaches the front line, not just a press release. To the public service machinery, at every level, remember why the people pay your salaries. That now has reached 8 billion. Say no to ghost names, no to fake invoices, to shortcuts that betray the public interest. And choose to be a generation of public servants that restored pride in serving the state. For the children in classrooms without a teacher, for the patients in wards without medicine. For the youth standing at the crossroads between a job and a gang. Let us do what we are mandated to do. Let us serve our people. Mr. Speaker, as the last part of concluding my speech, in handing out a graph that illustrates the expenditure from 1999 to 2025, which all members of this House have a copy. And you will see the different governments that took office and the legacies and record that they left. These are numbers, and they don't lie. The Makerere government inherited a government that was near collapse, where our exchange rate, kina, jumped by 30%, was reduced, cut by 30%. So they were managing the entire country with 2.5 billion, not 30 billion, where GDP, debt to GDP, had reached 70%, while we talk about 50%. Yes. So my question to the Marape government is, what will be your legacy? The record shows the legacy of Makeria's reform, and it shows the record of Samari's diligent management of the economy, where they left a 598 million surplus. The O'Neill government deficits, the Marape government, the next level of deficits. Will the Marape government be the next line of the story? What will it tell? Right now, it tells of corruption, incompetency, inefficiency. I commend also the efforts of the Treasurer. The economy on the macroeconomic level, and I have reviewed all the IFM reports since 1999, 2000, from each time the new government took office, to understand what were the views of the IMF and how we're running our economy. And all the underlying issues that they raised every single time is the same: accountability, transparency, good governance, excessive spending, inefficiency of public service. The same theme. Since 1999, they are saying the same thing. The only difference is that the likes of Makeria and Samari adopted what they said, and we have seen the results on paper. That is the difference. So, my objective view of the efforts of the Treasurer and the economy would be a -C in terms of the budget, because even if the Treasurer brought a perfect budget, he's not the one implementing it. The issue here right now is the implementation of the budget. A budget's just a projection on paper. Who implements it, that is the outcome. On the managing of the economy in terms of the public service machinery, then it's a D-.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. But that's not the Treasurer's function. That's the ministers, departments, secretaries, and the Prime Minister is responsible because he appoints them. And who you appoint represents you. If I may, Mr. Speaker, just to conclude my speech, is to read a little section, paragraph of a report done by the APG that describes the level of corruption. This is the same organization that carried out a full assessment of the country, anti-money laundering risk, and as we all heard, we will be grey-listed come February. It says, Mr. Speaker, if I may, it's called the Asia-Pacific Group of Money Laundering. It is an intergovernment organization consisting of 42 members, of which PNG is a member, as well as an organization and observers from outside the region with PNG as a member. Now, I quoted a part of their report where it says, the threat of corruption and bribery in PNG is pervasive, deep-rooted, and entrenched in politics and business. PNG's National Risk Assessment identifies corruption as the highest money laundering threat. Transparency International Corruption Perception Index score for PNG is 30 over 100, and PNG ranks 130 out of 180 in the world. There are numerous open source reports and media articles highlighting corruption, including misuse of government funds and kickbacks, and bribery are widespread. Fraud is significantly underreported, making the level and value of offending difficulty to quantify. In cases where corruption is involved, there is often related fraud, such as false documentation, to facilitate the activity. The crossover with corruption and fraud is significant, with fraud and mismanagement of funds found to be common among public officials. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister now enjoys his term to complete this term unabated following the recent Supreme Court ruling. He does no longer have to submit to political interest. He now has to decide, based on his faith and based on his legacy, how will Papua New Guinea remember his government. He has an opportunity now to clean up the mess. The Treasurer has done his part on the budget, but the implementation through our public service and corruption is an area that he is mandated. That is the Prime Minister, and it will stop with him and his departments. If the Prime Minister is truly committed to seeing the improvements in our people's welfare, then I would ask that he consider appointing members of the opposition and government to form a special parliamentary committee and allow us to go in and smash the rot. Because public servants cannot, international agencies cannot, they do not fully understand the landscape of how corruption is entrenched in our country. So with that, I conclude my speech. Thank you.
The Chairman of the Permanent Parliamentary Committee on Plans and Estimates.